All right, in our SAC meeting today, I'm going to cover several different topics. Some of those will be relevant to all of us. The bulk of what we will talk about will be particularly important to 6th through 12th grade instructors, because that's the area where we have the biggest need as far as identifying or putting in place a written curriculum along with what we have as a taught curriculum. But I want to begin with looking at a Google Sheet that was sent out by Mrs. Grinstead. And what she would like us to do is to add in any of the apps or web programs that we are using in our class. And you can add them to this Google Sheet, and you'll see that there are tabs down here for social science and science and ELA, fine arts, CTE, PE, etc. And I make note of this because, to begin with, I put all of mine in the very first tab, which is the math tab, before discovering when I started making this video that there were actually multiple tabs. So if you'll put your science apps in this, we can see if we have any duplicate subscriptions, kind of keep track of the things that are being used in our classrooms, and then, get rid of some of the things that aren't being used, or maybe find ways to pare down some of the things, like, for instance, and I'll just use Edpuzzle as an example. Edpuzzle is something that Mrs. Budke and I are both using at the high school, but it's a paid app. If we can find something that works the same, that is free, or if it's something that's similar to an app that many people are using, where we can all use the same paid subscription, those are things that the district would like to look at to make sure that they're not paying for duplicate services or duplicate apps that do the same thing. Okay, so if you'll take some time today and work on that, and add to it as you go through the semester, particularly if you add anything that you're using in your class, that would be great. Mrs. Grinstead would greatly appreciate that. Okay, on our front, we are mostly going to talk about our curriculum process, and I'll start with this idea. We have a very good taught curriculum in our district. And what I mean by that is, what we teach in our classrooms and how we structure our lessons and how students progress through one class to the next is very effective. And it's been, shown to be effective, on state assessment scores and ACTs and all those things. The issue is that with that taught curriculum, you need a reflection of it as a written curriculum. Our written curriculum is, to put it mildly, is missing. We don't have one. We need to develop one, and so that's kind of the main focus for us moving forward. Now, you'll see on this curriculum process chart that hey, we're going to start here, and there's a first critical question: what arrangement best fits what we are currently teaching, or what is currently being taught in our particularly 6th through 10th grade? And I say 6th through 10th grade because we have Nancy Larson in place, and there is if we had a change in faculty at the elementary, there would be something in place where that person coming into the classroom would have an idea of what should happen, when it should happen at each grade level. That is not the case at the high school. Biology class and physical science class and environmental science class or engineering class or natural resource management or chemistry or any of these, while what is being taught is known, there isn't that continuum of, hey, here's what it looks like, here's the scope and sequence of it. And so this is where we need to spend most of our time. So you could see that, I have this first critical question in there, and it really comes down to are we going to look at the disciplinary core idea arrangement, the topic arrangement? And I'll say this about the topic arrangement. That's fairly similar, or will be the most familiar to those of us that have looked at standards. Or are we going to look at the conceptual arrangement? And there are plus and minuses for looking at each of these arrangements. What we need to do is, spend some time looking at, and I have several resources for you, and I will show you an app that I think everybody has on their iPad, but if you don't, it's an easy get. But there are several things that we need to look at so that during our next conversation, we can make this critical decision, because it really comes down to this idea. We need to look at, 6, 7, and 8 as being kind of an instructional block, and then really 9, 10, and I don't really include 11 because, for us, 10th grade really includes, chemistry and biology, and sometimes those are, 10, 11 courses. But, so when I say, 9 and 10, we're really thinking physical science, biology, chemistry, maybe natural resource management, those things. Because 11th grade becomes, where we start looking at physics and engineering and bio 2 and, those classes more, geared towards the top end of our curriculum. And not that those aren't important to have written curriculum in place, but it's, the place to begin for us is going to be these two kind of instructional blocks, and then we'll build out from them. Hey, this is specifically what happens in physics. This is what happens in bio 2. This is what happens in natural resource management, so on and so forth. Okay? So as you go through this, you'll see that in each of these arrangements, there's some slight differences, and I'll try and highlight these several times as we go through this discussion. But those differences are, for instance, physical science. If we think of it as the 9th grade science class or high school science 1, depending on which arrangement you're looking at, it includes, like physical science that we teach today is conceptual physics for the first semester plus most of the third 9 weeks. And then the last part of the class is introduction to chemistry and some chemistry related lab practices. So it's in essence a chemistry and physics introductory class. But if we change the arrangement, some of those things that would have to come into that would be, some ecology ideas and some earth science ideas, that get blended in there. Whereas in a topic setting, maybe that isn't the case. Okay, and so, looking at it, what best suits our students and thinking of it in these terms that, what are we, how do we put things in place so that the 10th grade student who maybe isn't going on to physics still gets, or maybe isn't going on to bio 2, still gets, a good introduction or a good overview of all of the important things in the science standards. So once we make that decision and we've decided we're going with the disciplinary core ideas or the topic arrangement or the conceptual arrangement, then we're going to start on the content mapping process, the standards, contents, and skills. And you'll see that I have a template in the Google Drive folder that has an example of this, and then there's some other resources in there, some intentional designing of curriculum resources. But we want to get into place, the standards, what is the content, and what are the skills. That way we have an overview piece of it, and then hopefully have that overview, which is a lot of copy and paste sort of work from the standards, but the generic overview in place for each of our 6th through 10th grade courses, sometime at the end of this coming semester or before we break for summer. And then in the fall, we can start with, content connections, what comes before and after, how are we connecting these standards, contents, and skill. We can look at our depth of knowledge for each of our, particular standards in there. What depth of knowledge are we working at? And of course, spend some time reviewing these standards, contents, and skills to make sure that we are, we still like the arrangement, that something doesn't need to move from one course to another or should appear in multiple courses. Okay, so we're always kind of revisiting that scope and sequence part of it. Then in the next spring, we can begin working on the assessment and project-based learning pieces that go with this. And that way we have pieces in place where we can measure our students' progress beyond just what we see on, say, a state assessment or, an ACT score or any of those things. Okay? And then this would kind of complete what we would call, quote unquote, the written curriculum component, that again is a mirror of what we are teaching. And then, the process becomes very cyclical where we review the scope annually. We probably aren't making changes as far as the DCI and the topic and the concept direction at this point, but we're continuing to review and revise throughout this process and add to assessment pieces or make changes as we see necessary. Okay, so let's go ahead and look in my drive folder here. And what I've got is I've got a star folder here, and I believe I've shared this with you, but I will make sure I share it with you after this video. But in here you'll see the 2021 curriculum information. And so when we open this up, there's a PDF of that SAC process that I just talked about. But more importantly, down below we see a PDF over topic arrangement, conceptual models, the disciplinary core ideas. These are just, descriptions of, and I'll open one of them up. So here's conceptual models, and you can see that it is pages and pages of information that kind of describes how this model of mapping your curriculum works, how it looks, how we go about putting those things together, how the model itself is structured. So there's information for each of those. The disciplinary core idea one, same sort of thing. Now, one thing I do like about this is that it has core ideas for first grade and kindergarten and so on and so forth. And then, you have the conceptual model, you have the topic arrangement. The topic arrangement is one that we're all probably most familiar with. Okay, again, elementary standards, here's kindergarten, and there's the standards, first grade, and the standards, and so on and so forth. Okay, so those things are there so that you have an additional resource to look at. There's an implementation guide in here, so we can look at this. And it's a guide for how we should be implementing the next generation science standards. And there's some cues as to how to structure what we're putting on our, curriculum pages or on our written curriculum. And then I have, I'm going to start with this overview document next. So understanding by design. This is a document that in my curriculum and instruction class that I took during my grad work, I thought this was one of the most useful pieces that in that curriculum and instruction class that they provided us. But, understanding by design is kind of a way for us to go about structuring, what our curriculum looks like. And even, fast forward to what a lesson layout would look like from that curriculum. And you'll see that, I have borrowed a lot of these template ideas to create the templates that I have here for lesson plans and, my digging into the standards one that I'll show here in just a minute. All of these were developed, during that curriculum class. Okay, so, here's an example of a document that I put together when I was working on writing just what a curriculum map would look like. And so you can see that the standard is there and the skills and content come next. So our standard skills and content, that first piece, that mostly copy and paste piece is there. What is the connection to the previous and future learning? So, vocabulary, depth of knowledge, reasoning, connection between previous and future. So this is just a template that I use to kind of lay out, some information. I believe this was for physical science when I did it. It might have been chemistry. I don't know it without really looking at it. And then, of course, at the end of this, I include the depth of knowledge rubric. And, if you've never seen this, you can Google depth of knowledge rubrics. There's probably 1,000 of them out there that you could find, but this is the one that I like the best, so I used it. And it does kind of give you an idea as to, these are the things that we should be asking students, or if we're asking students to do these things, this is the depth of knowledge that we're really talking about. So those resources, all these resources are available in that Google Drive, and they're there for you to take advantage of and really to review. But what I want to spend the bulk of the rest of our time talking about is the standards app. And so let me go back and show you that again. So the Ngss app, and this is what it looks like, this orange one right here. And the Ngss app, I think, is a great tool because you can go through and we can look at, disciplinary, core idea arrangement, and you can see, so middle school physical science, this would be that 6, 7, and 8 block, right? Middle school physical science, life science, earth, and space science. And when I look at that, so matter and interactions, and there's the standards, motion and stability, energy, waves, and their applications. Okay, these are the standards for middle school physical science. Whether that be 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade isn't as important as whether we view it as a chunk of curriculum. So 6, 7, and 8 are its own package of curriculum where we are going to repeat these, physical science and life science and engineering practices over and over and over again. Okay, and so we can look at this, that the life science one, so molecules to organisms, ecosystems, heredity, biological evolution. Okay, these things, again, whether that would be in 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade, it doesn't really matter. And then you have middle school earth space science. Okay, and so you can look through earth and human activity. And I think this is fairly close to, the arrangement that we have had, where over the years where we have kind of a physical science and then a life science and an earth science arrangement. And good or bad, it doesn't, that part doesn't necessarily matter. You can see that in here we have high school physical science and life science, and high school earth and space science, high school engineering, technology, and applications of science. So it's a little more difficult to break the disciplinary core ideas out, and use those as our guiding deal at the, 9, 10, 11 level, but still not impossible. If you look in here, here's physical science, matter and interactions, motion and stability forces. It's basically a repeat of that middle school physical science class, which we would expect, it to be. One of the things that you'll see in that resource package that I put together in the Google Drive folder is there's a content matrix, and you can see that the content just repeats itself over and over and over. And, I like to use the analogy of a snowball rolling down a hill. It comes around again and again and again, but we're adding more and more layers or more and more depth of knowledge to that as it comes around. Okay, so topic arrangement, again, this is what I think is most familiar to people. So again, the middle school physical science, life science, earth science. You have physical science, life science, earth and space science. Now, the high school earth and space science is an issue because we don't have a high school earth and space science class at the moment. Okay, so that is a bit of an issue for us. And what we've done is kind of relied on that 8th grade earth space class to kind of carry us through to 11th grade. But one of the things that I like is I like the conceptual progression model. And you could see, and this is usually where people start feeling concerned, because it says high school course 1, high school course 2, high school course 3. Well, is that biology? Is that physical science? Is that chemistry? What exactly is high school, course 1, course 2, course 3? Middle school, it's a little easier to understand. I'm going to start here and I'm going to look at high school course number 1, matter and its interaction, motion, stability forces, energy, waves. Okay, so all those things seem very similar to what we've seen in the physical science class up to this point, but then you add to it some ecosystems and interaction, Earth's place in the universe, Earth systems, Earth and human activity, and then, of course, our engineering standards. So I still think that high school 1 looks like a physical science class, with the exception of what we do right now. Some of those chemistry ideas at the end of the year might become more, earth space, environmental looking ideas if we went with a conceptual progression model, arrangement. Okay, so high school course number 2, you've got energy, waves and their application from molecules to organisms, ecosystems and interactions, heredity, Earth's place, Earth systems, Earth and human activity, engineering design. So this one looks a little more like biology to me. It does have some waves and their applications. And, these things, when we think of waves, oftentimes we think, probably think in terms of physical science. But, waves and their applications, I think those are ideas that we can work into each of our classes. Energy kind of the same way. And then physical or high school course number 3, ecosystems and interaction, biological unity and diversity, Earth's place in the universe, Earth's systems, Earth's human activity, engineering design. Okay, so we really have 2 courses with a life sciencey kind of feel, and 1 course with more of a traditional physical science feel. And then, those themes are repeated in the middle school course 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so for us, what we need to do is we need to look at ourselves. What are we teaching, in biology versus what are we teaching in physical science versus, And so if it were me, I'm taking my physical science class and I'm looking at, okay, well, does it look like, this physical science arrangement by, content idea? Does it look, is it closer to just going with this topic model? Is it better suited to go that way? Or should we be looking at this conceptual progression model? Okay, and that may change, kind of some of the ideas that we do at the high school level, particularly with like physical science to maybe now we have to go biology to then later, chemistry maybe becomes an 11th grade class where, we're back to this idea that, hey, I'm going to define chemistry by these topics. Your upper level classes would be defined more as a topic arrangement as opposed to this conceptual progression arrangement or concept or core idea arrangement where we kind of blend some of the curriculum ideas together. Okay, so those are difficult questions, but if we go back and we think about that model, which of these fits what we're doing the best? Okay, and once we make that decision, hey, we're looking at topic. Okay, so the topic model works the best. Then we just need to start working our way through this is what happens in each of these classes, breaking out the standards, content, and skills, and start putting the pieces together. And the same thing would be true 6, 7, and 8. Breaking these things out. I will, add this. I think it's to our advantage to use the same model, whether it's topic or conceptual or, content idea, core idea. The same model, 6 through, our 10th, 11th grade looking classes. So those are the things that I need you to look at. I need you to go back to, the Google Drive, get into that folder, dig into some of that information, because when we get back together, we're going to need to make a directional decision fairly quickly. Now, luckily, elementary, or primary level teachers, we're pretty set. We can build off of Nancy Larson, and we have some things in place. But at the high school, we're in a little bit more dire need of a written curriculum that supports or reflects what we have in our taught curriculum. Okay, so good luck with those. Make sure that you get your apps and web-based ideas or your apps and web-based items into that Google Sheet, and enjoy your time, your pseudo 3-day weekend, and thanks for your hard work.